In this lesson, we're going to look at some of the admin tasks around creating and managing Mailbox databases. So here I am logged onto the Exchange server, and I've already logged into the Exchange Admin Center, and I'm just going to drop down the bottom here to the Servers section on the left, and then up the top here we want to click on Databases. And when we first installed Exchange, this Mailbox database was created automatically for us, and it's given a random name of Mailbox database and then a series of numbers, and those numbers are always unique. They're uniquely generated at the time of setup, and the idea there is that no two Mailbox databases can have the same name, so of course Exchange needs a way of randomly generating a name for it. Now this is fine if you really don't want to worry about it. There is nothing about this Mailbox database name that affects end users, but you're going to be typing out these Mailbox database names in PowerShell when you're administering things, and you may have a more descriptive naming convention that you want to apply. So what we can actually do is rename that Mailbox database. So we just click on the edit icon there, and I'm just going to call mine DB1. So it's nice and short because I will be typing this quite frequently, and that's the only setting that I want to change right now. I just want to rename it to DB1 and save that. Now the other thing I'm concerned about is that this Mailbox database exists within the Exchange program files area. So by default it just gets placed in the C drive where we installed Exchange. So we get a Microsoft Exchange server, Mailbox, and there it is sitting in that Mailbox database, and that same randomly generated number. There's all the transaction log files, and there's the database file itself. So we've got transaction logs and database files sitting in the same folder on the C drive. Obviously that's not ideal. What we'd like to do is move those to the dedicated volumes that have been set up for logging and databases on this server. You can see I've got those here, E for data and F for logs. So let's look at moving that database, and what we're going to do is jump into PowerShell to make that change. So I just need my Exchange management shell. So if I run get Mailbox database, we get to see DB1 is there. So what we can do is say get Mailbox database DB1, and we can pipe that into the move database path commandlet. And there's two things we want to give this one. So I'll just bring up the Explorer window again. So, D drive for data, databases, and E drive for data, F drive for logs. So we want to set the EDB file path, which is the database file path. We'll say edb1 db1.edb, keeping it nice and simple. And then the log folder path of fdb1. Now I don't have to put anything after DB1 there. I don't have to specify a file name. We're actually just specifying the log folder path where it will store all of those transaction files. So pushing enter. Now we get a warning here. We're sure we want to perform this action of moving the database path DB1. I'll say yes. And another warning that says to perform this move operation, the database must be temporarily dismounted, which will make it inaccessible to all users. So if you're doing this in the real world, of course, you would schedule this maintenance for some time out of hours where you can dismount it to perform the move. Of course, this is a test lab. We can do this anytime we like, so I'll say yes. And so you can see the progress indicator there. The database gets dismounted, the files get moved automatically for us. The Active Directory attributes, where those database and log folder paths are stored, get updated, and then the database is brought back online in the new location. And that's all done automatically for us by that move database path commandlet. So if we were now to jump back into Explorer, we can see that on the E drive, this DB1 folder got created. And there's the database file as well as the search index files, the catalog. And on the F drive, there's the DB1 folder with all those transaction log files as well. So that's the existing database taken care of. What about if we want to create a new database? So in many organizations, it's not at all uncommon to have multiple Mailbox databases for various reasons. So I'm going to create another 2. So let's get started. We'll call this new Mailbox database DB2. We only have one server to store it on at the moment. And a database file path and log folder path were chosen automatically, but we don't want those paths to be used. So I'm actually going to place those again on the E drive for the data. So E, DB2, DB2, EDB. And the logs I'm going to place on F drive again. And you also have the option here to mount the database immediately. You can leave that ticked in this instance, that's fine. In the real world, you may find occasionally what happens is the database can't mount straight away because the new database object and all the information stored in Active Directory hasn't replicated to all of the right domain controllers, so that first mount attempt will fail. And typically you just need to wait a little while and then try mounting it again later. Okay, so that database was created. We see it pop up here in the databases list. We also get this warning, please restart the Microsoft Exchange Information Store service after adding new Mailbox databases. Now, this is just a warning to let us know that we should restart that service because the way Exchange allocates memory for use by the information store, it depends on the number of databases that are available or exist at the time that the service is starting. So when we create a new one, we need to recycle that service so that it can start up again with the new complement of databases that can allocate memory correctly for all of them. So again, in the real world, this is the kind of thing that you would probably schedule for out of hours at a time where you can cycle that service. Here in the test lab, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to be a big performance hit for us anyway until we start loading up that database with users. So I'll click OK. Now I'm not going to do that just yet because I want to create a third Mailbox database as well. And I think what I'll do is I'll jump into the Exchange Management Shell for that one. So I'm going to use the new Mailbox database commandlet. I'm going to give this Mailbox database a name of archive DB, an EDB file path of archivedb archivedb.edb. So I'm sticking to naming conventions somewhat there, and a log folder path of f archivedb. So as the name suggests, I'm actually planning to use this database as a location for archive mailboxes, which is something we're going to look at in a later lesson further down the track. But I wanted to create the Mailbox database now to demonstrate a few other things when we're creating our mailboxes, which is happening very soon. Now I left out the server parameter there, so it prompts me for that because obviously it needs to know which server to create that Mailbox database on. And there we get that same warning, please restart the Microsoft Exchange Information Store service. Let's just refresh this view back here. We can see the archive database has appeared, so that's no problem. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and restart service, and the service name is MS Exchange IS. Okay, so that's done. So what we've done there is we've just renamed that default Mailbox database and then moved it to a better location. We've also created 2 additional Mailbox databases, DB2, which will store mailboxes, and the archive DB, which is going to be used for archive mailboxes. And then at the end there, just restarted the Exchange Information Store service, which helps with the server with its memory allocation for all of the database instances that it's running at the time. So let's look at a couple of extra steps just to round things out. How do we know that those Mailbox databases are working? Well, there's a couple of things we can do. We can run get Mailbox database, which will output a list of those databases, and then we can pipe that into test MAPI connectivity to see if they're online and accepting MAPI connections. We can see that the archive database is currently dismounted. So all I have to do is run mount database archive DB. That will mount that database up for us. I could also dismount the database, and you get a warning before you do that, because it lets you know that the mailboxes will become unavailable. And just to demonstrate, we could also perform those tasks here in the Exchange Admin Center just by highlighting the database name, and from this drop-down list, selecting Mount Database. You can see that status change over here from dismounted to mounted. It's as simple as that.